It's been a long day, a lot of heavy conversations since morning, and I'm guessing by now our frontal, parietal, temporal, occipital lobes are spreading in all directions. Yes. So on a lighter note, I read this last year that the human life, if you consider the average human life of 80 years and you break it down into 4 segments of 20 years each, you can roughly define these 4 stages. Stage 1 is called, you believe in Santa Claus. Stage 2 is, you no longer believe in Santa Claus. Stage 3, you are Santa Claus. And stage 4, you look like Santa Claus. Now, where is this analogy with learning and development? When you look at how L&D as a function is perceived by talent in an organization, roughly follows the same stages. Allow me. Look at freshers who've just been hired from campus, and they're being told there's a dedicated function that will take care of their learning and development needs. That's stage 1. They believe in Santa Claus. Fast forward to 3-4 years later, and there's a sense of disillusionment that have set in because they realize that they've attended a lot of programs, but those are not really linked to either their performance improvement or career progression. Now they stop believing in Santa Claus. Then they reach managerial levels, mid-management, mid-senior level, right? What are the 3 things, when you hold an MDP, right, that most common questions that people ask for, other than what's in the learning and who's coming for the program? 1, is it happening in a hotel? 2, is there free food? 3, are we going to get certificates at the end? Right? So, see, now, you are Santa Claus, right, for that group, right? The 4th group, well, it's best that I don't discuss it here on this platform. But, moving on, we now have reached a cusp. If you look at what eminent authors, researchers, technology futurists, yes, there are people who go by that label on LinkedIn, technology futurist, right? You've seen that. I can see several faces nodding. There are people who go by that designation. If you look at what they are predicting now is that we are at a cusp where human learning and machine learning are, in the eyes of some, at loggerheads with each other. And in the eyes of others, are in a beautiful symphony. It's an orchestra, right? So Steve Jobs was once asked that, the coders do the coding, the programmers do the programming, the quality guys do the testing. Every single musician is playing an instrument. What do you do? And he said, I play the orchestra. I don't play an instrument, I play the orchestra. And that's the role of all of us in the field and space of learning and development, talent development, skill development, capability development, call it what you will, to play this orchestra, to create this harmony between human learning and machine learning. That brings us to our topic for today with the august panel that I have here with me. My gratitude to all 5 of you for joining us here on stage. Talent development in the age of automation. Human learning versus machine learning. That's our theme. And without any further ado, I'm going to bring about a series of inputs, perspectives, opinions from the panel. And then, of course, if we have time, we're going to also throw the floor open for a Q&A open forum between you and the panel. Having established additional accolades for the evening, we shall move on to, once again, talent development in the age of automation, human versus machine learning. Now, given the current disruption caused by AI and automation, one of the questions that keep coming up in journal publications and industry events regularly is, has the strategic scope shifted in terms of L&D vision and priorities now, or is it still the same? So I'd like to get 60-second opening remarks, starting with Mihir.
Thank you everyone to have me here, and looks like I have to give the opening statement like an opening batsman. First of all, this is very interesting question here because I wear a hat of Chief Revenue Officer, but the recruitment and learning and development becomes part of my key function here. For me, the answer is yes here. There is a big shift happening here. The shift is happening. Earlier, the L&D, the learning program used to be for 5 years. It used to be for 3 years. We heard from various panelists across the whole day here. But now what trend we are seeing for each skill set is, it's between 3 months to 18 months now here. And this is, I'm seeing fastly in the market, two things are happening here. The environment is also changing and also the learning is changing here. When I say environment means, is organization ready to adapt to that change or not here? We all know that we have to upskill our skills, everything. Employee knows, employer knows. But is the environment ready or not, number one. Number two is how HR as a function is able to enable this here. Third thing, very important thing is, we as a resource, how do we incentive that so that we look for how do we keep on changing the workforce here. So my strongly is a yes to this. The scope is also changing and also the learning methodology is changing. Plus also the adoption is changing here. And this is where I just like to bring to the point the change management, the adaptability, and the role which is coming in here. Because just till last 1 month back, I was not aware of what is deep sense. Suddenly, everywhere it has come in now, yeah, what is difference between ChatGPT and DeepSense and how it can use for L&D actually. Yeah. Now, this is what the market is going to bring, plenty of disparate technologies which are going to come in here. So I feel the scope is also changing, environment is changing, and technology is changing. So we need to gear up with all the three here. This is my opening remark, and of course I will just wait for the other panelists to give their views here.
Thank you for that, Mahir. Would like to hear from you now. Shilpa?
Thank you so much. What I feel again, like he mentioned, yes and no, both the ways. So if you look at the crux of it, it is not changing, right? So when we are talking about aligning the talent, right, to the requirements, right, an organization goal, you need to nurture them. Is that changing? Absolutely not. It is changing. It is not changing, right? Like Stephen Covey mentioned that you need to sharpen your saw. Is that changing? No. Continuously you need to learn, right? Now what has changed? Maybe the technologies have changed, the agility which is expected. We are talking about, employees which are hybrid, remote. They are working that way, right? So obviously that methodologies are changing. We are expecting that people need to upskill, reskill, and even cross-skill for that matter, continuously, right? And we are talking about AI. So what kind of skills then we need to learn there? And even there was a question I just heard in the other panel discussion where CEOs were also part of that panel. And is it going to be that leaders are going to be ruled out completely and AI is going to take over? And the answer was no, which means leadership skills are going to be there. How do you, emotional intelligence is going to be playing important role, right? Your well-being, how are you taking charge of the situation and making use of AI and technology to work for you? That is going to change. So that's what I feel.
Okay.
Thank you for that, Shilpa. Moving on to Shailendra.
Okay, Shilpa, thank you so much. And Mihir, thank you so much. I think wonderful inputs from your end. I, being an L&D leader for almost 18 years now, and also an hotelier, we are sitting in a hotel. So 2.5, 3 years back, the way we used to train the people, I think there is a great shift in that. I will give you a personal example of what we are doing. We have a chatbot with us. And that chatbot is, training and, learning our people in every other language. You ask French, Indian, German, whatever language. So, yes, 3 years down the line, 3 years before, we were not in the position of thinking that, yes, this will happen one day. But today we are doing it. Today we are following all those things. For next 3-4 years, again, we can see a shift in this particular part. But I totally believe that, yes, a lot of things are changing. Even we see there are 3 to 4 generations working at same time in same place. We have the senior managers who are at different age group, then middle management or different age group, then the newcomers, they are definitely Gen Zs and so XYZ things. So different generations working at same place at same time. So yes, the approach is changing from my point of view. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Shailendra. Inputs from Deepthi?
Sure. Thanks, Abhishek, and thanks, everyone. It's a very interesting question, and I think I'll take a leaf from Vidusha's narrative when he spoke about get your basics right. So for me, the why of talent development, the why of L&D is not changing. So the vision of why an L&D exists in an organization will never change. But what changes is how do I prioritize what I want to prioritize? How do I do things? How do I deliver things? How do I achieve that vision of why an L&D is needed in an organization is changing? And I think the biggest shift is getting proactive. Traditional L&D has been very, very reactive. We continue to be kind of caught up somewhere in that cycle. I often hear someone saying, oh, we are in the discovery phase to find out what we need to do. By the time you finish your discovery phase, forget analyzing the inputs, the problem no longer exists. So how do you get proactive? The how is where the change happens. And that's where I think all of us will have to get slightly proactive to say, how do I jump onto that pace at which I need to respond? How do I prepare myself better? And that's probably what will have an impact on what we do as an L&D team.
Thought-provoking as ever. Moving to Ayo.
All right. For me, I think scope changing has been in existence for so long. The scope has always changed as things evolve. Even within an organization, the moment your focus changes, the scope of what you want to learn change. So it's not something that is just starting. But like she said, L&D is constant. It's about development. That's constant. That's not going to change. What is changing is what are you learning? What are you developing? That is what changes. It's either the market trend changes it, or the business growth changes it, or what is technological advancement changes it. So scope has always changed, and it will continue to change. But the concept about L&D is about learning and development. That's not going to change. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Ayo. And with that, we conclude a diverse set of opinions from this august panel in terms of whether the scope of learning and development has shifted strategically in terms of L&D vision and L&D priorities. On that note, very quick opinion poll from this wonderful set of veteran, seasoned professionals. We often keep saying that we keep hearing about micro-learning in the last 8 years as a major L&D innovation. Now, how many of us, raise your hands if you believe that the learners of today, particularly the young learners of today, note I didn't say Gen Z. I didn't say that. We'll get to that. The young learners of today prefer micro-learning, and micro-learning is very popular, in demand. Raise your hands if you believe that. Okay, so I have about 8 or 9 hands. Oh, more coming up, 10, 11, 12, 13. Thank you. Now, on the other side, please note you've already raised your hands, those of you who did, right? So now comes the next question. Those of us who already have micro-learning programs institutionalized within our organizations, how many of us, raise your hands if you find it insanely difficult to follow up with people to complete the learning courses assigned to them under said micro-learning platforms? Right, same set of 8 to 12 people again. Right, so you see the difference here? We are trying to have our cake and eat it too, right? This is the interesting conundrum of our times. Not just in micro-learning, but this is the interesting conundrum of our times. On one hand, micro-learning is in demand. That's what I hear, right? At Persol Kelly Consulting, we conduct end-to-end learning interventions for a variety of client organizations, and there are several clients who keep coming back to us and saying, we don't want interventions anymore. We want micro-learning. If that's the case, then why do we have to chase people? The truth is that the focus of L&D is no longer just developing skills, learning for the sake of learning, if that was ever the case, let's say, a century ago. Today, learning and development needs to have clear vision and priorities, a clear employee value proposition, a clear competency value proposition, which is tied in to two things: performance improvement and career progression, at least for employees at the grassroots level in the organization. Of course, as you move up the ladder, you're going to have more motivations to drive people into learning rooms. One thing that stands out in all our research, which brings me to my next question for this panel, is the pace of skill redundancy. 5 years ago, it took a few years for a particular skill to get redundant. Today, it takes less than a year and a half or 2 years for a skill to become obsolete. And in certain industries, it takes less than 6 months. So it is an undisputed fact that the pace of skill redundancy has accelerated across all roles, all domains, all departments and functions of your organization. My question then would be, and I'd like to bring in Shilpa at the very beginning. My question would then be, is it possible that currently within organizations, this skill redundancy is currently being tracked in a proactive manner and not a reactive manner? Over to you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so when we are talking about predictive analysis, right, in terms of what kind of skills are going to be important, I'm sure that there is a lot of work which is happening in that space. So I can give you an example of this, right? So, in the previous organization where I worked, we had created this something called technology relevance index, right? So by this technology relevance index, one can figure out what are my customers' requirements today and what are the requirements going to be in near future, right? And this technology relevance index used to get published to the employees, and then employees can figure out in terms of what is my current skill and what is the career track that I want to pursue. So what would be the aspirational skill of mine? And in fact, we used to take care of those people who used to clear the aspirational skills and also used to get deployed on those projects which required this kind of skills. So I feel definitely predictive, analysis in that way is possible. And then we gave career growth to those people, right?
That would be one incredible example of a real-life scenario where this has actually been accomplished. A follow-up question on this would be, is there a possibility, Deepti, if I can come to you on this, is there a possibility that given how tedious this process is, going department to department, role to role, analyzing every skill and trying to predict what's the pace of redundancy coming up in that skill over the next few months or years, is it possible for us to get machine learning algorithms to move into this, Deepti, or do you think it should be done by people manually?
Okay, so anytime we think automation, the moment you think I have something that needs to be scaled, repetitive, automation is the answer. And this is a very beautiful use case to bring in machine learning. When we talk about skills redundancy, we have to look from two perspectives. One is the industry itself. The second is the organization and the organizational strategy. Very rarely an organization, someone in the leadership in the organization is going to have like an epiphany, wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to change the strategy overnight. Doesn't happen, right? It is a long drawn process, and there is a cause and an effect to strategic changes. And some of these are guided in the industry as well. So when we think from machine learning perspective, there is an opportunity to map out what that future strategy looks like. Most organizations will have a 3-year plan or a 5-year plan. Oh, I've seen someone with a 25-year plan, and it is a very interesting case study from Dell. But this enables someone to map where are we headed? If the organization says, I want to do digital transformation tomorrow, what elements are falling into digital transformation is getting mapped out, which means you are able to identify what skills in my current talent pool will become redundant tomorrow, right? For example, I was working in a sourcing organization focused on apparel, and they were working on digital transformation, and they had specific automated machinery within the team that would help them identify the different colors of the fabric and help them with the whole process that happens in the apparel design and manufacturing. Now, to do that, whoever was doing this process manually, and you required certain manual skill sets, they are going to become redundant. But it's not going to happen overnight, right? And that's where the element of machine learning comes in, because this was in the pipeline. By the time the budget came in for buying such an expensive unit, there was that timeline to build that skill set. So if you use that opportunity, you are able to build the skills, retain the talent, take away the admin-heavy, manual, tedious workload from all the HR and the recruitment teams, and they'll bless you if you bring in automation, because, I mean, none of us loves admin-heavy work, right? Maybe it's nice once in a while, but we want to do strategic thinking. We want to spend our effort in driving real, strong results, and maybe doing analytics and insights versus actually capturing the data. So capturing data, parsing the data, all of that, machine learning is a beautiful example there.
Alapina, yes, please.
I so echo with what both of you said. I just wanted to give out. So I think I so echo with what you said. I just wanted to add in point with skills, also the competencies, if that could be mapped with a ML and algorithmic based. Just to give you a case study, so when we were doing this for one of the AI project that we had, ambient listening technology was catching up. Okay, and we knew this would hit, I think, somewhere down 3 years down the line, and that's when a competency-based mapping with a algorithmic match helped us. So I think tech along with the mapping is, I think, would be enabler.
Yes, Meher, you'd like to jump in.
So this is very interesting because technology is very close to my heart and HR is also very close to my heart. Yeah. See, from HR perspective, yes, we are caught up with this AI, ML, human intelligence, emotion intelligence. All of these are the key buzzwords, yeah, as a HR, because we are empathy here, correct? But from a technology perspective, what has happened is ML was there from a long time, actually. See, currently only we all are talking about ML, actually. ML was there from long time. But what has happened is the ML way it has been incorporated and enabled it, and how we are embracing is what is changing, actually. The cost of implementing is changing, actually. Now, one very interesting thing what is happening is the models, actually, which we all are talking about, which are technical jargon, actually. Earlier, there used to be plenty of technical jargons. We could have heard about reinforced learning, supervised learning, unsupervised learning, logistic regression. All of these various are there. Now, suddenly, LLM came into picture here. LLM was never talked about 18 months back here. Now suddenly 3 months, 6 months back, generative AI. Last 4 days back, I started having a very interesting discussion and I wrote a white paper, Agentic AI here. Now what is happening is that AI itself is shifting now here. That means technology is shifting now here. Now comes very important question is, how do we as L&D start taking and incorporating this across the organization, actually? Now, when I say L&D are two perspectives. One is from an IT service industry perspective, and one is from a non-IT service perspective industry here. Because the L&D is different in both the industry, actually. Because the IT industry, where majority of we are trying to serve, is a different concept, because we have to be always on the foot on the move, try to be ahead of the curve. So the L&D is a different way what we are trying to learn here. And there is another set of people who are non-IT service industry here. Because I am catering to both the type of industry, so I just like to bring this point is, the non-IT industry, what is happening, it's a traditional way what they want to do here. Now, how do we as a L&D, as a HR, as any role what we are playing is, how do we take it up here? And that is where my first question when I was trying to say yes was, scope is changing, yes. Micro-learning, yes. Now, how we tie all of that is, earlier, when you used to do, traditionally, we used to give a 18 months plan, 12 months plan, and used to say that, okay, in this year, you have to learn and go, yeah. Now, today, every resource is looking at, I want a hyper-focused, my own customized learning, actually, yeah. Now, how will I get hyper-focused, customized learning is knowing the strength and weaknesses of that particular individual here. See, earlier, it used to be a classroom training where anyone can come and train, it works it out here. Now the heavy focus is going to be is, for my weaknesses, for my strength, can you give me a roadmap where I can learn at my speed here? Everyone has their own speed actually. Now that is where AI, ML is coming into picture. How do the machine algorithm, whether it is for IT industry, service industry, BPO industry, or non-IT industry, manufacturing, whichever industry you say is, how do I create that focused for each individual where I can have a customized learning plan? Now that is where a HR function, it becomes very challenging. How do I see that no favoritism happens? Because see, what happens is if there is a smart guy and if he's able to learn faster and faster, will I support his growth? And there's another guy who has same experience, but his learning curve, he needs a hand holding. How do I take it out? Now that is going to be a challenge as a HR function where I am really finding a challenge today. How do I manage these two sets of people? AI, ML, everything is there. One set, super aggressive, they are able to do a self-learning. Another set, they need self-learning plus hand-holding. Now as a HR function, which we all are here as part of it from L&D perspective, how can we take it forward here? And it is really interesting because there's nothing called yes or no in this answer here. Because every environment is right. All of us are telling a right answer. But this is how I like to see how we all are going to meet whenever we meet again. What delta change that has brought in here? And I'm looking forward, and I echo to all of your thoughts here. Thank you.
Yes, Deepthi, you'd like to come in. Yes.
I just wanted to quickly add something, and this was very interesting. In one of the knowledge sharing sessions, we were talking about the same skills aspect, and everyone wants personalized learning. So there is a platform, I'm not connected to them, but it's called Degreed. If you're interested, you can take a look at it. It's like in the skills industries, and they are very focused on skills development. Large pharmaceutical companies where you have production lines and a lot of different skill sets have been successfully migrating onto that. So what it does is you put in skills and competencies that are required, and you map them and feed them into each of the roles. And content is put in, and it's up to the individual user to pick and choose what they want to learn, right? And that's where managers, being coaches and mentors, plays a very important role. And I've heard and spoken to some of the leaders in the industry who are using it, and they found it very useful. Now, to the question that Mihir was asking, I mean, this is where I found Degreed very interesting, was it's your own personalized choice. You pick and choose what you want to learn. Now, that also gives the system an input. If there are certain skills which nobody wants to learn, then that's a data point for the L&D team to investigate, saying, why are they not learning? Which means either it's redundant or something's missing. Now, the second element is if someone's learning and struggling, because obviously there are some ways to knowledge check, then that's where the core L&D team has earmarked a set of skills which they have to go through, self-paced plus hand-holding plus application kind of models. So that takes care of the core skills, but there are tools available which do the human plus technology part very beautifully, and they're based on ML. So that helps.
So on that note, particularly summarizing Alapina, Mihir, and Deepthi's perspectives, this is exactly what we call as tech-aided, hyper-personalized learning pathways. Hyper-personalization is something that's not 20 years into the future. It's happening right now as we speak. We already have examples here on the panel, witnesses, evidence. And Mihir, on a more serious note, that IT versus non-IT segmentation, thank you so much for bringing that up, because every research survey that I've been looking at for the last 12 months talks about the pace of skill redundancy varies. In non-IT, it's roughly about 2.5 to 3 years per skill. In IT, it's anywhere between 4 months to 12 months for a skill. So pace of skill redundancy needs to be analyzed within an industry perspective between IT and non-IT. That's on a more serious note. On a lighter note, I love the way you said technology is so close to my heart, right? I have a great uncle who says the same thing. He doesn't know anything about L&D tech. He says it because he literally has a pacemaker attached to his heart. Moving on, which brings me to my last question of the day. I'm getting glaring looks from here. So we need to move to the next segment of today's event. This is a topic that I'm pretty sure, polarizes the entire room, and I would love to see that polarization happening here. This is about Gen Z. On one hand, we have so many articles, white papers, coming up specifying that the Gen Z are very clear on what they want to learn. They are very particular about their learning mode, learning subjects, learning medium, and so on and so forth. And therefore, organizations are aligning entire L&D architectures towards what Gen Z wants to learn, right? On the other hand, I also see an incredible number of research surveys where CEOs, MDs, CLOs, senior vice presidents keep lamenting with a horrified expression in those interviews, press conferences, that there is a severe employability skill gap in the workforce that they are hiring, incidentally, Gen Z again. Which now tells me that on one side you have the want, which is what Gen Z wants to learn. On the other side, you have the need, which is as organizations what you would need them to learn. Now, this want and need doesn't always overlap as idealistically as we would want them to. So my last question, and I'll start with Ayo, then come to Shailendra, and then move on. How do you foresee, in your strategic foresight, that L&D ecosystems of the future will balance this want and need when it comes to Gen Z? And any examples that you'd like to quote is something we would all love to
Okay,
hear.
so for me, I think I have an advantage. Everybody that works with me are Gen Z, the workforce. So it's quite interesting. And yeah, so part of what we've identified is those two things will likely always conflict. And I think it will confuse machine learning as well. Because they will be confused. These are people that change every day, every time. One day they want this, the next thing they want this one. You'll be amazed. Even now, one of the confusion, I have a 7-year-old girl. What do you want to eat? It's always, I don't know. Sometimes they don't even know. So I imagine what will happen to their generation. But now, when we even talk about that, you could tailor them. For my own industry and for my peculiarity of what I do in performance management and the way we've defined it in Nigeria, we don't have a choice. We'll keep hiring Gen Zs continuously because we found that we need to groom them. So we have what we want to teach them. And then during interview, there's a way we set it up to understand who is teachable, to understand what we want them to learn, not also neglecting what they want to learn and how they want the work environment to look like. So we put that into consideration. And also to understand that developing those skills forward, planning for what they want to learn, we need to consider both the functional and the behavioral. The functional is easier to even use machine learning that based on this, AI can help you generate those functions competency. But it's a bit difficult when it comes to the behavioral. And that's where the human function still comes in. You can't totally neglect that part. That people that I bring in at the same time, you could identify, looking at them, and know this person has a challenge when it comes to communication. Very good at what he does, but in terms, he's a tech guy, but in terms of sending mails, for instance, he doesn't understand the normal greeting and all those things. I mean, he sent a mail to a client one day saying, oh, I need this thing ASAP. And I was at the gym, and I saw the copy of the mail, and I was like, please, can you record? Please, can you record that mail immediately? Because, you know, in my own culture, where I come from Nigeria, some people, you send some things to them, it could be seen as being insulting. So you also need to put the culture perspective into it, which also could be difficult for that AI. So that's where the human thing. So you need to understand them, and I believe you can align them. We have successfully aligned it, what they want to learn and what we want to teach them, and we find the midpoint. We allow them to learn what they want to learn, but we also make them to learn what we want them to learn, so that what they want to learn can make them deliver on what we want them to do. Thank you.
Okay.
Interesting perspective. Shailendra?
Yeah, Abhishek, I would like to add one thing to it. There are two perspectives looking at the Gen Z, right? Okay. There are two perspectives of looking at Gen Z. First of all, I do have, a lot of people working with me at Gen Z at the moment, and I have really analyzed them. I have a program known as Dream Program that for my management trainees, and all the Gen Zs, they become a part of it. There are two perspectives, as I'm saying again and again. First one is for few of the managers to whom they report, it is that they are not, very attentive, and their span of, attention is very less, the concentration is less. But for others, it is they are really amazing, they are really proactive, and they are doing the things in a really very nice way. So there is something that how we train them. It's important, right? As we talk about the personalized learning part, right? So we need to ensure that there has to be, the learning patterns need to be changed for them. That's really very, very important. They learn in a very different way. They give you the result in a very different way. And when they start giving you the results are really amazing. Some of my, Gen Z dreamers, they are doing exemplary well, right? They're handling bigger assignments, bigger than the capacity of their reporting managers can do, right? So this is really amazing. It's an amazing generation. The only thing we all people sitting here need to do is we need to realign the way how we are tackling them, how we are getting the work done. I'll give you a wonderful example. I went to one of the institutions, that is IIHM, right, few days back for a campus interview. Instead of doing the campus interview, I just thought of taking a small survey. I asked them, okay, I'll employ you. Kindly tell me what all things you're looking for. The survey was really amazing. They were looking for flexibility in their job. They were looking for, a parallel alignment with their reporting bosses. So their requirement is different. That is the only thing. We need to little bit work on our learning patterns, the skill set they required, the skill competencies, and the other thing, and definitely the learning data analysis, especially for Gen Zs. And I'm sure we'll get wonderful results out of it. Thank you.
Agonizingly short on time. Quickly, I'm going to get Alapina and then Mihir for the final comments. Yes.
I'll be very brief. So I think I catch up on your point with flexibility. Just give them a perception, and I think we would be doing fine. And second, in terms of their style, which could be synchronous and asynchronous way of learning, right? I think just catch that up, and I think we will be sorted. And I think the way to look forward is DIY. Because I think learning paths and curves are passé. Do it yourself in terms of crafting your own journeys and taking the accountability to lead is, I think, the way forward. Because we as an organization, I don't think so, would be now drawing those paths and curves. I think they're doing brilliant job. The way they say that raise yourself before you raise your children, I think same stands for organizations.
Phenomenally well crystallized, Alapina. Moving on to Mihir.
So basically, there are two sides of it, but again, I'll just stick to my opinion, what it is, my personal opinion. Now see, why I like Gen Z is very much is because they don't carry any baggage. Now when I want to experiment, when I want to do design of experiment from a L&D perspective, from a HR perspective, from an adopting new technology perspective, to embrace a technology, to embrace a new methodology, I need people who are not carrying any baggage here. Because when we all are coming through a certain ages experience, we get influenced or we are getting biased in our thought process actually. Now they come without this baggage actually. That is the biggest advantage they have here. Second advantage, as you all rightly, all of you all said, is they have fire in the belly. Because you know what, my Gen Z, I have nearly 80% of my team is Gen Z, and they only ask me, sir, how can I make first lakh rupee in next 2 months? We never had a guts to ask that. I never had guts to ask my manager, let me know when I can make a lakh rupee here. Now they have guts. See, that is what is called the change of thoughts, correct? And that is where they are very clear, crystal clear here. Now we as a HR and as a L&D function or as a HR function, how do we channelize that fire? How do we channelize that energy? How do we channelize that they don't carry this baggage and marry with the organization which we already have people who are lateral actually. And what organization is looking at is, it needs this skill set. It also needs people who are experienced here. Because we need both this A plus B, which is 1 plus 1 is equal to 11 actually. So we never can say that Gen Z can replace everyone. And we never can say that, okay, only the old timers will be able to do. So I keep on advising everyone is 1 plus 1 is equal to 11 actually. Now, comes the thing is, as a HR and L&D function, how do I give a very aggressive career growth plan for them here.
True.
Now, because they are super hungry, super energetic now here. Now, how do I give them, and that is where the micro learning, the hand holding, give them a assignment which is even the bosses or manager doesn't get into it. And now that is where it becomes very interesting as the HR dynamics whole thing. How do you give them visibility here? See, they will keep on doing all this work here. Another important thing is visibility, because they are very hungry for success. They are very hungry for pat on the back. They are very hungry for limelight, etc. So I think it's a combination of all of this. But one thing is for sure we can't disagree is they are changing the way our thought process. They are pushing us here. Especially my team is pushing me here.
That's why we have this question here.
So thank you so much, Alapina, Ayo, Deepthi, Mihir, Shilpa, and Shailendra. Can we have a round of applause for our distinguished panel? Thank you. On that note, a quick closing summary. The topic for today's panel discussion was talent development in the age of automation, human learning versus machine learning. And when you look at the practices that several organizations have begun, how many of us are familiar with these apps that have come for coaching and mentoring? App-based, right? AI-driven. Wonderful. There is an organization, I will not name them, in Europe that launched these apps with zero mapping to the kind of scripts, the kind of questions, the kind of philosophical thoughts that the learners had before the app was launched. There is another organization here in Asia, I will again not mention the name here, that spent an entire year building a pool of mentors who were responsible in the organization for providing all the mentoring and coaching. But all that they did was they fed in hundreds of questions from mentees in Gen Z, mentees, coaches, whatever you want to call them, and curated the responses from the mentors, pushed into the machine learning algorithm in such a way that now the same mentor can, in the same week, mentor 100 mentees. Wow. Right? One mentor mentoring 100 mentees. Remember, humans are not inspired by robots. Humans are inspired by humans. So I will leave you with a food for thought. In the words of the technology futurist A.J. Scott, machines are already becoming better as machines. It's time for us as humans to become better as humans. Thank you.